Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse. I think my regular viewers know me well enough by now to know that I'm just not a fan of burst damage. I prefer consistent, constant high damage numbers. This is why I use faster weapons like daggers and why I don't use perks like triple threat. But today, we're not doing a normal video. Today, I'm going to try to do the most damage I can in a single shot. How high can the damage get? Well, let's try to find out. Real quick, let's talk about how character damage is calculated. Now, this is a gross oversimplification, but roughly, weapon damage is separated into three main chests. The first chest adds up all the major percent bonuses: melee, ranged, pure damage, boss damage, all of those. The second chest adds up all the critical hit damage percentage multipliers. And the third chest adds up all pet perks that don't already fall into chests 1 or 2. Currently, this is only triple threat. Once you have the base weapon damage and the numbers for those three chests, you multiply them together to get the actual damage that you will do. Again, this is an oversimplification, but that makes the formula roughly look like this. Does this formula account for everything? No. Will you find a ton of inconsistencies if you try to use it yourself? Yes. But it will give you a rough estimate of what to expect. With all that in mind, let's take a look at the gear. All of our gear is level 18 and reinforced. For armor, we have the Scarab set. All three pieces drop off of Raw Car in the Desert of Beginnings. The main reason for this armor is because of the bonus that adds your Thorns damage to your melee or range damage, and this is a huge damage boost. The lantern is going to be the Pearl Lantern. This can be crafted at the Octarine workbench. We're using this item for its attack speed boost. The necklace is the Glass Bead Necklace. This drops off of large crates in the Shimmering Frontier and adds a massive critical hit damage boost. The rings, I went with the gold crystal rings to max out range damage. However, swapping out one or both rings with a polished golden spike ring has also proved very effective for me. I feel like there is still room in this build to adjust the rings. The offhand is the blue leather tome. This adds a major bonus to range damage, and it drops off the shaman boss Malagaz in the Forgotten Ruins. The bag is Morpha's bubble bag, but it doesn't really have much effect on this build. Finally, the weapon of choice for this build is the Flintlock Musket. This item can be found all over the early game map and does the most single shot damage of any weapon in the game, ranged or melee. For this build, you need a very specific Owl Lux. You want one that has 4 critical hit damage perks and 1 triple threat perk. The goal of this is to get a 40% critical damage boost and a 2% chance to get triple damage. When it comes to skills, it's all about maximizing your damage output for ranged attacks. In the running tree, we have Keeping Tempo, adding 15% damage. In the melee tree, Strength of the Ancients adds 20% damage to bosses. In the vitality tree, you want Desperate Fighter for a 20% damage boost. I also took Strong and Healthy for a 10% boost at full life, but for this build to max out its damage, you need to take a few hits, get low in health, and get that 20% boost from Desperate Fighter, which makes things risky. Very risky. In the ranged tree, there are a ton of skills. Keeping Momentum stacks for up to 20% damage. Weakness Detection helps us get those critical hits we need, and Amplified Precision is useful for the 40% boost to critical hit damage. The Gardening tree has 3 skills that matter for this build. First is Thorny Weapons, which adds 25% critical hit damage, and the second is Thorny Skin, which adds 50 thorns damage, improving your Scarab set bonus. The final skill is Potent Poison, which adds 25% damage against poison targets. We will be putting poison slime onto the ground as part of testing. The fishing tree has well-trained aim for extra range damage, and power of Omega-3 for a 15% boost to damage against bosses. Finally, the cooking tree has healthy diet to make your well-fed damage boost go from 5% to 10%, and the smell of food, which adds 30% to your overall damage. I have already spent time figuring out how to maximize critical hit damage, range damage, and pure damage percentage boosts for food in my video on food buffs, linked above. Check out that video for details on which buff foods I used during testing for this build. Let me start by saying that this is a very strong, but also very slow build. With the average non-critical hit at 15k damage, you will one-shot any non-boss mob you come across. Be careful though, because this build does not handle groups very well. The weakness of the slow speed can cause you to become quickly overwhelmed. This is a build that excels on 1v1 combat, that top sniper build. I wish I had a one-hit kill shot of Igneous with over 240k damage to show off, but because of the inconsistencies in Triple Trouble, the best I was able to accomplish was 188k in a single shot. Now this is enough to kill Igneous in a single blow in standard, but not in hard mode. I did, however, get several critical hits in the 74 to 81k range, and if these crits had been Triple Trouble procs, they would have ended up in the 222 to 243k damage range. The top range of the crits is enough to kill Igneous in hard mode, but it isn't going to be a common critical hit. And on top of that, it has to proc triple threat as well. Putting poison slime on the ground will help improve your damage by 25%. This isn't practical when roaming around, but hey, it works great for bosses. Recently, I got my hands on a weapon mod that can help me remove a lot of the random elements and really help get down to the actual math behind how to get the most damage possible. I'd like to be able to determine exactly how high the damage numbers really can go, and now I have the tools to actually find out. But it's going to take a lot of testing and a lot of time. So be sure to subscribe, because I will definitely be making another one of these videos in the future once I've had enough time to really work out every detail, iron out all the inconsistencies in the damage formula, and test it all thoroughly. Until then, this build is pretty close to the best you can get, and I hope it will suffice for now. And I think that just about wraps it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and until next time, stay crazy.